Okay, well, we're trying something new at the ROKK Rundown this week. Everybody's so tired, it's been a week. And by tired, I mean just there's been so much happening, news all the time, every single day, and that's, I think, what I really wanna get to today. Saturday night, White House Correspondents Dinner, violence at the Correspondents Dinner, right? So regardless of how you feel about what happened, a lot of people have a different opinions about what happened there. Our journalism friends, like, sprung into action. Is that just in their DNA? It's amazing how people you were seeing these pictures of people with their phones up in the air filming what was happening right there in real time. Wolf Blitzer had a moment himself. Ron, what was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I mean, the fascinating part was listening to was how fast they did kick into action because like there are people that were grabbing their phones and just standing up while others were under the table. They were standing up recording. And then after it was a little bit more secure, I saw a photo in Axios of three reporters, comparing notes. One was transcribing into the phone, and our pal Tony Frada with Goldman Sachs was just sitting there at the table, kind of looking a little shocked and resigned to the fact that he's going to be hanging out in that room for a little while they figure
Yeah.
out what was going on outside. Yes. And that type of situation, too, you have multiple reports coming in, lots of potential opportunities for misinformation. We heard about the shots fired and then a Secret Service agent taking a bullet and all of those things are sort of the heat of the moment. And it was fascinating.
Rodell, we had a lot of clients that were there in that room too. I know I was with some at an outside event. What was your takeaway from all of that as it was unfolding?
Well, so I was not there. I was actually not even in Washington, D.C. I was most of the way, almost all the way across the country. I was in Las Vegas. And, interestingly enough, I start getting, and like, thank you to everyone who sent a text. Are you there? Are you okay? I had no idea what they were talking about
Yeah.
at first, to be quite honest with you, until my wife sent me what had happened. I think that the thing that to me is amazing, and I think eventually folks will kind of, have to deal with this. There was a point in time when there was a tragedy and you had a little bit of time to process before you had to act. And I'm thinking of the reporters, no time to process. It was this thing happened. And to your point, Lisa, it is, full on. We've got to record. We've got to get on the phone. We've got to talk to our producers. We have to make sure that this is captured. And I commend them for that. But at the same point in time, I do feel sorry, like that like, no time to process, no
No.
time to think about like the safety of friends or anything. It was just, we have a job to do and and we need to do it right now.
What was so interesting too is that there was like a fast recalibration on a lot of different levels. Plenty of publishers had after events that were happening. They had to move. Someone told me a story about how they were moving food out for their after event quicker because the dinner itself finally did get shut down after having to wait for about an hour. To your point, Ron, Tony sitting at the table wondering what was next, right? Where he's going to be. But also to the White House really pivoted pretty quickly to a moment to take that opportunity to talk about their own message. What was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, they set up a press event and there were White House correspondents still at the Hilton that had to race back to the White House. I saw Mary Bruce jump on an electric bike in her dress and
Right.
just start pedaling as fast as she could to get there. And of course, everyone there was in black tie. Um, and I thought at that moment, that was a very nice moment for America. I thought President Trump handled himself quite well, and the press corps too. I think everybody had this sort of this, wow, this was a shocking moment and really very sad. And I thought that the country kind of came together for a little bit. I do commend Trump for staying on his own message of promoting the ballroom, of course. But I mean, we all know that he was probably going to do something like that. At the same time, it was something that was rare. It was nice. It was a nice message to Americans that everybody's okay. We're focused. We're moving forward type of a message. I thought that was good.
I heard that from
Uh,
not just Republicans, but also from Democrats for that
yeah.
one moment before he sort of launched into some other business about the
I was going to say
ballroom.
then we arrested James Comey and tried to
Oh,
kick Jimmy Kimmel off the air again.
well, never a dull moment and never a moment for rest, Rodell, for sure.
Yeah. Now, listen, I see it a little bit different than Ron. I wasn't there, so I do appreciate the moment. I said I would like to have appreciated the moment. Is a better way to say it, but I wasn't there. I think maybe my concern is that moment could have lasted a little bit longer. So this is now the second time that someone has tried to shoot the president.
No, a third time.
One of my third, you're right, third time. I guess my concern is just, how we might be becoming desensitized to this. It was like this thing happened, and it's like, what's next? Just kind of like rolling on, and that moment, after Butler, that moment lasted a few days. I think there was a lot of introspection. I mean, it finally did go back to we're in the middle of a campaign, so yeah, it went back to that. But it does really seem like this thing happened, and then the next day, it's like, all right, we're back to our separate corners and touch gloves and kind of come out swinging. And so, I think that's sad for the country, but I think it's also just where we are as a country right now.
I
I
think it's
think
a
there's a
reminder too.
can I
Hey,
just jump in? I think there's a couple of
of
reasons for
course.
that too, though. Part of it is that no one was killed, and that was the miracle, is that the only person that was seriously injured, really seriously injured, was the assailant himself because he tripped and he fell and he bashed his head on the floor and was laying there. I mean, that fall, really saved everything. But, I mean, I think
That's
that
a good
cut the
point.
coverage a little bit shorter because you don't have the terrible horror stories of a mass shooting or the funeral that takes place and all of that thing that would drag it out for a few days. And then additionally, with King Charles visiting the United States, the coverage started shifting, just gravitating towards him, which I thought was actually kind of positive. I mean, it was a really, we all had friends and coworkers inside the ballroom. I found it rather relieving. I will say, yes, the partisan atmosphere after that, you know, and Rodell's absolutely right, came roaring back. And of course, we're in election year. Of course, it's going to come back. It's going to be crazy. I will say
Yeah,
just one other thing. There was one moment of comedy throughout this whole thing. There was a CAA super agent for Wolf Blitzer who never dove under the table. He sat there at the table while everything was going down and he kept eating his meal. And credit to the internet, to social media, who spotted him on C-SPAN and took that video. And then somebody just wrote, "My man," and we all it was like, and they interviewed him and
continued to eat his
they
dinner.
asked him why, what was going on with him. And he said two things. He said, number one is he has a bad back and he can't get down like everybody else. And two, he's a germaphobe and he didn't want to get on the floor. I mean, he was an older man. I think he was in his mid 70s, it looked like to me. But anyway, I just thought out of all that, when that moment happened, I let out a big laugh because I needed it.
I'm a germaphobe. I'm not impervious to bullets, but like, can't get down on the ground. The
All
whole,
right.
just one last thing on that. I thought that Dana White's take on this, I don't know if you guys saw that either, was
Yeah.
also crazy. Everyone is like, this is horrible. I can't believe someone tried to do this again. You hear all of these stories and like there are people. I mean, all jokes aside, I think there are people that are still kind of dealing with this that were in the ballroom that that were scared for their life. And you got Dana White, the head of UFC, being like, it was like the most awesome thing that I ever saw. He's like, I was taking it all in or ducking, but I was up and I was watching everything. And I'm just kind of like, all right, okay, adrenaline junkie. That's
For
one
sure.
take, I guess. So
The
I
blessing
know.
here,
And
I
the other
think, is
take
that
last night was I talked to somebody who was there at the event and she did not freak out because she didn't know what was going on. She had just no idea. So she was just kind of confused and like, oh, well. So I was like, I think sometimes I'd rather be confused. But anyway,
your point. I think though the final point and the takeaway here, Ron, is that you're right. The blessing is that no one was hurt. I mean, other than an accident, right? Small accident. And that we live to tell the tale and we live to fight another day. And I think more than anything, it makes us all a little more resilient about how we react to these kinds of things. But look, we're going to talk about this again and again on the ROKK Rundown. I'm so glad to have you, and we'll see you guys next time.